Hi, welcome to our Unit 2 video review. First time I've ever actually done this. First thing I need to tell you is that this is a copy of the review packet. And the program that I use, actually, I can't record anything that I write on top of the review packet, so what I'm going to have to do is kind of reference back to it. And I'll have this window open, and then I'll also bring my smart notebook where I can actually write out problems on, just so you're aware. So let's get started. First of all, number one, what is the solution of each equation? First of all, number one says 2 plus 3z equals 5 plus 3z. So again, I'm going to have to write this right here where we have 2 plus 3z equals 5 plus 3z. My first step that I need to do is get my z's on the same side. I always like to move the one on the right to the left side. I need to then subtract, so it's the opposite of adding. And then what I get is this cancels out. This cancels out, or I get 2 drops down, and this gives me 0, or just cancels out if you'd like to call it that too. Don't need the 0 anymore, so you can just write 2 equals 5, and that is not true. 2 is never equal to 5, so that means there is no solution. So looking back, that was choice C. Okay, now if you look at number 2, it says what is the solution of the proportion? This 14 over 12 equals d over 48. That is a proportion for number 2. So if I go over to my smart notebook, I need to cross multiply. 14 times 48 equals 12 times d. So I rewrite that as 12 times d equals 14 times 48. And then my next step, I again just write 12d is the same as 12 times d equals 14 times 48 is 672 on your calculator. I then would divide by 12, and I would get d is equal to 56, which I believe on your paper is choice A. Also, number 3 it works the exact same way, and I will be giving you an answer key in class. Number 4, I will be talking about this in class as well, but I would like you to skip this problem. Okay, for the second round, this is the short answer parts where it says what is the solution of the equation. I'm going to start with number 1. Number 1 says 16 equals negative d plus 6. So first I need to subtract 6 from both sides. Cross my 6's out. I then have 10 equals negative d. I have that negative in front, so I can call it a 1 in front or a negative 1 in front. I then have to divide by negative 1 on both sides, and I'm left with d is equal to negative 10, or you can write it as d is equal to negative 10 in that direction, and you are done. Okay, looking at number 2, where it says 4.7x plus 3.8 equals 13.2. Obviously, you're going to need a calculator. It's a two-step equation, though. I simply subtract 3.8 from both sides, and I'm left with 9.4, and then drop down my 4.7x. Pretty obvious. I then divide by 4.7 on both sides, cross that out. You then get x equals 2. Done with number 2. Okay, now I'm going to do number 3, and I'm going to do number 3 in 2 different ways, and I want you to choose which one's best for you. I can't tell you which one's easier for you, so I'll just show you 2 different ways. The first way is by clearing the fraction. I'm going to multiply everything by 7, because that's what this fraction says is on the denominator. So when I multiply 7 times 6 over 7, I'm going to get 42 over 7. Leave the x there. 7 times negative 8, that gives me negative 56. 7 times 7 will then give me 49. And then, if you divide 42 divided by 7, you get 6x minus 56 equals 49. And now I'm going to go really fast because this should be really easy for you. I'm going to add 56, and I'm going to get 105 on the right, 6x on the left, divide by 6, and you're left with x equals 17.5. If I do the one on the right, the different method, the same, if I do it right, I should get the same answer. So how I do it is simply a two-step equation and then you're going to multiply by reciprocal. And so I get 6 over 7x equals 15. And then I have myself a fraction here. So we multiply by the reciprocal rather than dividing by a fraction. And on your calculator, these cancel out by the way, you will get 15 times 6 over 7 will give you exactly 17.5. Whichever way you feel comfortable with, make sure you go ahead and do that. Okay, so number 4, this is a word problem. It says Hannah wants to buy a $570 camera. She can save $50 each week from her paycheck. However, before Hannah can buy the camera, she must give her brother $80 that she owes him. For how many weeks will Hannah need to save before she can pay back her brother and buy the camera? So going over here to my smart notebook, 50x minus 80 equals 570 is the equation you should have. 50 comes from, as you're looking at your paper in number 4, comes from $50 each week. That's the 50x each week. Minus 80 comes from what she owes her brother. That's negative money. So minus 80 equals 570. That's the total that she would need to buy that camera. That's how you set up the equation. Then it says for how many weeks. The weeks is x, because remember we said each week. So what I need to do is to solve a two-step equation by adding 80 to both sides. And I'm then left with 50x equals, if I can find it, 650. I then, of course, divide by 50 on both sides. And I will get x equals 13, and that's weeks. It'll take her 13 weeks to save up. Okay, now I'm going to do number 6. Number 5 works exactly the same way, just with different numbers, so I'm going to do number 6. Number 6 says b minus 6 all divided by negative 3 equals negative 15. The problem, remember, is the fraction bar. I need to get rid of that fraction bar by multiplying both sides of the equation by negative 3, and those negative 3's will then cancel out, and I'm left with no fraction bar. b minus 6 equals negative 3 times negative 15 is 45. I then add 6 to both sides, and I'm left with b is equal to 51. Okay, another word problem. Number 7, John and 2 friends are going out for pizza for lunch. They split one pizza and 3 large drinks. The pizza costs $12. Remember that? They spend a total of $16.95. Find the cost of one large drink. Okay, going over here. 3x. 3x stands for the 3 different drinks. In other words, there are going to be 3 different drinks that we don't know what the cost is. So $3 or 3 people, and we need to find out how much each is. That's the x. So 3 times the cost of each drink will give you obviously 3 drinks. And then the pizza costs $12. That's where the 12 comes in. That's automatically going to be paid. And then $16.95 is going to be the total. So again, I take this 3x. Okay, 3 people times the cost of the drink plus $12 is the pizza cost right here equals our $16.95 that we have a total, and we're going to find x. That's what each drink costs. So we're going to subtract 12 from both sides. Cross it out. You're left with 3x equals $4.95. And then I'm going to divide by 3 on both sides. Cross that out. X equals $1.65. So $1.65 per drink is what that costs. And that makes sense. It wouldn't be, obviously, if I got 21.26 on here, it wouldn't make any sense. All right, now what I'd like to do is do number 9. And number 9, as I write this on my other page here on Smart Notebook, number 9, you would not be using this PEMDAS that you see written from the previous problem. What you would do is you need to follow your steps. And your steps are clear fractions and decimals, and then distribute. And I need to distribute 3 times y, 3 times negative 5. That gives me 3y minus 15 plus 2 equals 5. Then my other step is to combine like terms, and I can do that. I see this negative 15 in the 2 here, so I get 3y minus 13 equals 5. I then have to solve the two-step equation by adding 13, cancel it out. I then get 3y equals 18. I then divide by 3 and divide by 3, and I'm left with y equals 6. Okay, if you look at number 10, 11 is very similar to it, so we'll just do number 10. I have an issue here. I have fractions, so what I need to do is I need to multiply everything by that bottom denominator in the fraction there. So multiply that by 6, that by 6, and that by 6. When I do that, what I get is I multiply 6 times 4p, which gives me 24p. Leave the bottom the same, which is 6. 6 times 27 will then give me 162. And then 6 times 39 will give me 234. And then if I take 24 divided by 6, I'll actually eliminate that fraction, giving me 4p. Leave the rest there. And then again, solve yourself a two-step equation. And I'll save you the time. If you solve the last two steps, you will get for this one p equals 18. Number 12. It's one with variables on both sides. You have 6x minus 3 equals 5x minus 5. I want to move this 5x to be over with that one, so I need to subtract 5x from both sides. Cancel the 5x's out. I then get 1x minus 3 equals negative 5. And again, two-step equation. Add 3, cancel it out. You get 1x equals negative 2. You don't even have to divide, but just to not mess you guys up, I get x equals negative 2. Okay, looking at number 14. A copy center offers its customers two different pricing plans for black and white photocopies of that kind of pages. It's just paper. Customers can either pay 8 cents per page or, keep in mind that's or, pay $7.50 for a discount card that lowers the cost to 5 cents per page. Write and solve an equation to find the number of photocopies for which the cost of each plan is the same. So really quick, going over to my other page, I want to just show you the first option is 0.08x. That's 8 cents per page. The second option is 5 cents per page plus the $7.50 you have to pay for the discount cards. That's where you have 0.05, it's 5 cents per page, plus the $7.50 you have the discount card. We want to find out when they're the same. So what I need to do is move the 0.05x over to the other side. Subtract that, cancel the 0.05x's. You're left with 0.03x equals 750. I then divide by 0.03, both sides, and I get x is equal to 250 copies. When you have made, or when there's been 250 copies made, they will equal the same cost or price. Number 15 is 5 times the quantity 10x minus 10 equals negative 5 times the quantity negative 4x plus 4. I need to distribute both pieces. And then I'm left with 50x here. 5 times negative 10 is negative 50. Negative 5 times negative 4x is positive 20x. Negative 5 times 4 is negative 20. And then what I have to do is make sure I move this 20x over with the 50x by subtracting 20x to both sides. So that gives me 30x minus 50 equals negative 20. I believe is what that is. Yes, it is. Okay. I then solve a two-step equation. So I add 50. And careful, I'm going to skip a step in a second. 30x equals 30. And if I divide 30 by 30, it will obviously give me x equals 1. Okay, number 17 asks you, says, what equation do you get when you solve z minus m equals z plus bx for x? So I'm going to solve this equation for x. What I need to do first of all is to realize that I want to get x by itself. Everything else is next to that. I need to move over. So first of all, I want to move this z over to the other side. So I'm going to subtract z, just like I would a number. Subtract z because it's the opposite of plus z. I'm then left with, I actually get no z's over on the left side, so I could actually just cross them out as well. Then I'm left with negative m equals bx. A little bit simpler. Remind yourself that x needs to be all by itself. So how do I get that away from the b? Well, b is multiplied by x, so I need to divide both sides by b. And represented, what you're going to have is you're going to have x equals negative m over b, or you can write it as x equals negative m over b in the other direction, which is kind of a little bit nicer. Okay, looking at number 19, you got what is the height of a triangle that has an area of 60 square yards or yards squared. Sorry, I'll scroll down. "60 square yards," here we go, and a base with a length of 12 yards. So if I go back over, my area of a triangle equation is A equals 1/2 B times H. And so what I can do is plug in the things that I know. I know the area is 60. Don't worry about the square yards. That's just a unit measure. Times your equals 1/2 times your B. And I know my B was 12. That was my base. Times the height. So what I need to do is, first of all, simplify what I know. 60 stays there. 1/2 times 12 is 6 times H. I then simply divide both sides by 6. And I have a H, or height, of 10. Make sure you know what units. This happens to be yards. So H is 10 yards. Okay, 21, you can read it on your own, but 21 on your review says, at an automobile factory, 1,849 parts are made in 4 hours. So parts and that number of hours. That's the rate. That's the rate right now. What is the average rate, or we call it sometimes the unit rate if it's made per hour? All I need to do is divide 1,849 divided by 4, and what you will get is you will get 462.25, and we'll call that 462.25 parts per hour. And you're done. That's just how to get a unit rate. 23 says the total cost to rent a boat is $16 times the number of hours, X, we'll call number of hours X, the boat is used. How long can you rent the boat for a total of $224? First of all, the equation 16X stands for $16 times the number of hours. The number of hours is X, equals 224. To solve it, very, very simple. Divide both sides by 16. Cross that out. You're left with X equals 14 hours. So you can use that boat for 14 hours. Number 24, they want us to convert 144 feet into inches. So what I need to do is set up 144 feet over 1 so that I can use a fraction. I know that feet is on top, so when I use my conversion factor, feet's going to be on the bottom and inches is going to be on the top. So what I get is, I know that 12 inches are on 1 foot if you look at your conversion chart. And what happens is feet, the units for feet actually cancel out, and all you're left with is inches. So what I need to do is multiply on top 144 times 12, and you actually get 1,728. You're left with inches over 1, and that actually is just 1,728 inches. And you're done. 25, another conversion. They want you to change 111 feet into meters because they ask how tall is this in meters. I start with 111 feet, put it over 1, and then times it by your conversion factor. I know that feet's going to be on the bottom and meters are going to be on top. And as I look at your conversion chart, 1 foot is the same as 0.3048 meters. What's going to happen is my feet are going to cancel out. I then multiply on top, and you get 33.8 meters. And you're done. Number 26 wants us to convert 45 miles per hour to feet per minute. So 2 things I need to do. First of all, I need to convert miles to feet and hours to minutes. So what I need to do, let's take care of miles first. Miles will go on bottom because miles is on top over here. Feet would then go on top. And I know from my conversion chart that 5,280 feet are in 1 mile. And then what I'm going to do, don't even worry about math yet, is I'm going to look at hours happens to be on bottom. So I'm going to put hours on top over here. Minutes are then going to be on bottom. And I know that 1 hour is 60 minutes. Then I can go about canceling my units. So miles and miles will cancel out. Hours and hours will cancel out. Notice I'm left with feet per minute, which is what I wanted to do anyways. Now, what you do is you multiply across on top and bottom. And on top, you're left with 237,600. Still have feet. Divided by 60 minutes is 1 times 60. And then if I divide that out to get my unit rate, I will get 3,960 feet per minute. That's your answer. Okay, you guys seem to be awesome at proportions, but let's do 128. It says, what is the solution of the proportion? I need to make sure I cross multiply, make sure I protect that x minus 8, and write down that's 4 times x minus 8 equals 5 times 2. I first distribute, so I get 4x minus 32 equals 5 times 2 is 10. I do a two-step equation, which you guys all should know how to do, and you will then get x equals 10.5. So I'm skipping the two-step equation steps. Okay, number 30, it says a van travels 220 miles on 10 gallons of gas. And then find how many gallons, so I don't know how many gallons, the van needs to travel 550 miles. So I'm setting up a proportion to kind of compare them. So what I need to then do is solve this by cross multiplying. So I'm going to set this up as then 220 times x equals 10 times 550. I'm then going to simplify, and I will get 5,500. And then again, I'm going to skip steps on this one, and that gives me 25, and that's gallons. 32 says, school guidelines require there must be at least 2 chaperones for every 25 students going on a school trip. How many chaperones must there be for 80 students? So I know 80 students goes on bottom because we're comparing that. And I don't know how many chaperones would go with that. So we are going to cross multiply because we have a proportion. We can always do that. And I'm going to have 25x equals 2 times 80. I then get 25x equals 160. And then when I divide that, I actually get x equals 6.4, or in real person terms would actually be 7 chaperones. Okay, because it's just real life. I would at least need 7, not just 6. I would need 7. 33. You can do this a couple different ways, but I'm going to go ahead and compare this 8 divided by the 7 equal to the x divided by the 3 in that very particular order. You're then going to cross multiply, and you're going to be left with 7x equals 3 times 8. You get 7x equals 24. I'm going to divide by both sides again. I'm going to skip a step. Equals 3.428 feet, because that's what the original units were in. Here's a quick drawing of 35. Probably the ugliest tree you'll ever see, but the best looking stick figure you'll ever see. Really quick, this is what they give you. And in the sentence, it actually tells you that the boy is 5 feet tall. So you want to go ahead and fill in that information. And then all you're going to do is do exactly what you did in the previous problems by setting up a proportion. And I'm going to do that by going ahead and doing 2.5 feet divided by 5 equals, in the same order for the tree, 10 divided by x. Cross multiply, cross multiply. When you end up getting your answer, you will get that you find out that the tree is actually 20 feet tall. Number 38 says, what percent of 88 is 72.6? First of all, write down is over of equals percent over 100. We've done that in class. But let's just go ahead and plug this in. So first of all, what do you know? You know that the is part is 72.6. So I'm going to go ahead and write that in, 72.6. I know the of part is 88. And I know the 100 always stays there. And I don't see a percent symbol anywhere in the word problem. So what percent will actually stand for x? And then I simply need to cross multiply to figure out what this ends up being. And for number 38, it actually ends up being x is equal to 82.5, and that actually ended up being a percent. Because again, cross multiply. 39, I did something a little bit different. What I did was I wrote it out. It says 125% of what number is 264. So I just kind of broke it up. And what I'd like you to notice is that this part is going to be the is part. This part is going to be the percent part because you see a percent in it. And of what number? That's going to be the of that we don't know. We're going to call that x. So what I need to do, again, is write down is over of equals percent over 100. So what do you know? First of all, 100 is the same thing every time. Percent up top, just above there, is 125. Then I know over on the far right, I know that is 264. Put that in the right spot. And then x is what I don't know. I then cross multiply. And if you solve this out by doing your proportion cross multiplication, you will then get that x is equal to 211.2. Number 42, I wrote down the things that we know from the sentence. I know the interest that I want to earn is going to be $812.25. I know the principal is $1,900. I also know that the rate is 4.75%, which I want to make sure that I convert to a decimal, which is 0.0475. And I don't know the time. That's what they want to know, how many years. So I'm going to call that x. So I use the formula up top, and I simply plug in the things that I know. I know that 812.25 is my interest, and I know that P is 1900. I know this is times, by the way. It's multiplication. I know my rate is 0.0475, and I know my time is something that I don't know. So I'm actually going to call it T instead of X. Actually, I'm going to change my mind. We'll call it T just to get more comfortable with things. First of all, simplify each side. So on the left, I have 812.25 still. On the right, I'm actually left with 90.25. If you multiply that out times T, I then will divide both sides by this 90.25 to figure out what T is. And I will then get T is equal to 9, and again, that was years. Know what you're talking about. For number 43, it says the viewership of a television show has decreased from 5.1 million viewers to 3.5 million viewers per episode. Find the percent of decrease in viewership to the nearest percent. First of all, what I already put up top was the change. It changed by 1.6 million viewers. What I need to do is I need to write down my amount of decrease over my original amount. And when I say over, that means divided by. So my amount of decrease, I'll just shorthand this. Amount of decrease is that change that we talked about, 1.6 million. And then my original amount was actually 5.1 million. So we'll say 5.1 million. And if you took literally 1,600,000 and divided it by 5,100,000, representing what million is, it would still give you the same thing as what 1.6 divided by 5.1 would give you. So we'll just shorthand it, and it actually gives you 0.3137, which as a percent, you want to represent as a 31% decrease, because it asked for what the decrease was. For 45, you can read the problem, but I just went ahead and did my increase from the 37 number to the 33,000. That gives me an increase of 4,950. So my increase on top is 4,950, and I then need to write down my original amount, which was 35,000. So I need to divide those out, and that will give me exactly oops, sorry, I got my problems mixed up. Really quick change. This is actually 33,000, I believe, on the bottom. Yes, it is. I wrote down the wrong problem. That's okay. 33,000. And then what I actually end up getting is 0.15. And then if I change that, that gives me 15%. And that's an increase. Very similar, almost identical to 46, which I kind of messed up on. Oops. Okay. Okay, if you look at 47, this one's a little trickier, so our last problem. 7 feet by 4 feet. That tabletop, 7 feet by 4 feet is a 28 square feet area, and then 8 feet by 5 feet is a 40 square foot area. That's because you multiply 7 times 4 and 8 times 5. You then need to figure out the change, which the change from 40 to 28 is actually 12. So change over actual is what you need to find, and a change from 40 to 28 is 12, and my actual is the 8 by 40, which that was the 40, or the 8 by 5, which ended up being the 40 square feet. So then I divide 12 divided by 40, that gives me 0.30, or 30%. So my percent error was actually 30%. Okay, that was the review. That was every single problem in here. I know that was a long review, but hopefully that will give you some intervention and help.